But you saw that. Packed. I get up this morning, I turn on one of the networks, and they show an empty field. I said, wait a minute. I made a speech. I looked out. The field it looked like 1.5 million people.
That clip from the 2017 inauguration of President Trump. But there's a story that sort of screams deja vu right now. The former president insisting that his next tour will garner big crowds. The Reality Check, though, tells us a different story. Politico reports that tickets to Trump's joint history tour with Bill O'Reilly, set to kick off in December, are selling slowly compared to other acts. In fact, when compared to the tours of Michelle Obama, the Clintons, and popular comedians, Trump's rates come in way short. In Houston, 60 to 65% of seats remain unsold. That's according to Politico. That article actually prompted O'Reilly to threaten a lawsuit against Politico, with both him and Trump arguing that sales are doing better than reported. Joining us now to discuss, Democratic strategist Emily Tisch Sussman and political consultant Shermichael Singleton. Emily, this sort of begs the question, could this be bad for the former president's image? Is the Trump shine starting to wear off for some of his fans?
He does love a crowd. We know that, number one. First and foremost about him, he loves the crowd, especially as he's starting up the rallies again. But I think the indication of slow ticket sales, I don't know that it should actually indicate that support for him is waning among his core base, particularly because they're operating with a totally different set of facts. And in their reality, he is not only going to be the president again, he is still the president. We know this from reporting outside his rallies. They believe that they will reinstall him in August. It's unclear exactly who they is and what that moment is that would reinstall him. So they are still extremely loyal. What I think was an interesting indicator this week of political support for him is the first kind of cattle call in Iowa of bringing together candidates. Reporting out of that showed that everyone who attended had voted for Trump, and many of them still support him on a lot of emotional and cultural reasons. But when asked if they would support him again, it was about 50-50. So at least these people are somewhat living in reality. They don't think he is going to be the president in August because they are reinstalling him. They know there will be another election. But many of them were saying that he didn't actually do a lot that was good for them and make them better. So that's where Biden and Democrats have a big opportunity to potentially cut into Trump's support in upcoming election.
So, Shermichael, if we look at this sort of from the perspective of the Trump supporters who were quietly supportive, what would Trump falling out of favor mean for the Republican Party in 2022, 2024, and the elections coming up?
I mean, I think a concern would be, Aaron, is whether or not some of those Trump voters, those who are vocal and those who are quiet, will indeed turn out in the numbers that are necessary. Now, I think party leadership would clearly like to turn to a new page, a new chapter, move on beyond Trump, while still being able to utilize aspects of Trump to engage with voters that they themselves may have a difficult time turning out. With that said, I would add that I think choosing Bill O'Reilly was a mistake here. I would have probably chosen like a Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson. I also wouldn't have announced this at this point. I probably would have announced it closer to August, maybe even late September, to give people less time. So there are a couple of strategic mistakes from a marketing perspective that I think the folks who are advising them just completely did wrong. I think they missed the ball altogether.
Emily, former presidents typically have a pretty easy time selling out tours. Politico reported that. What makes Donald Trump different this go-round, do you think?
Well, I think that it's probably hard for him to secure venues, probably hard for them to secure sponsors, potentially even vendors. As much as his presidency was divisive, he still was the president. But once he crossed that threshold after January 6th, after the insurrection, and continuing after the election just to hammer the results and just be in a total state of disbelief, it really did feel and continues to feel like a little bit of a chipping away at the democracy. And so companies are concerned about associating themselves in that way. So he really has to align himself politically with sponsors that are naturally inclined to support him. On the point of him joining up with Bill O'Reilly, what I found so striking about it is these are not the two easiest characters to work with. I mean, these are some incredibly difficult personalities that I can't imagine they take direction from anyone. And honestly, it only feels like a matter of time before they announce that they can't go on tour together and they can't work together.
Sure, Michael, very quickly, I'm out of time, but I do want to ask you as someone who's been a Republican operative and consultant for a long time, at the end of the day, is it advantageous for the GOP to start to distance itself from the former president?
I would say I would wait until after November 2022, Aaron. I think there's a lot riding on the line. I think, Trump has made some statements. He wants to go after 10 Republicans in the House who voted against him for impeachment, et cetera. I think he needs to leave that alone. I think Republicans have a good opportunity, potentially, looking at the early math, to regain the House. That needs to be the focus, nothing else. Regaining control and being a check on the Biden administration, if that is what the party truly wants to do. You can't get into the minutia of things right now. Right. You have to focus on winning round two. Lost the first one, you live again to fight again, and I think November 2022 is that opportunity.
All right, we will leave it there. Emily Tisch Sussman, Michael Singleton, thank you.